Good morning, everybody. I already saw a familiar face coming through the gate, so that was wonderful. I wanted to talk about my life a little bit, but I wanted us to all just kind of take a deep breath together and sort of create the magic of resonance. So you can close your eyes for a moment. Deep breath in through your nose and breath out through your mouth. 2 more times. In through your nose, out through your mouth. Good, good. There's a lot of energy in the room. So as I'm up here talking, it builds for me before I go into trance. So I like everyone to kind of come together in that breath, and you all did. You all just kind of sat into that breath. And by a show of hands, I wanted to ask, how many of you are familiar with channeling or have seen transvocal channeling? Just by a show of hands. Oh, good. Okay. Quite a few of you. Before I go into trance later, I will talk a little bit about that for those of you who have never seen it, or it can be a little bit strange if you've never seen it. But now I wanted to go into my life a little bit, which I don't typically do, by the way. So when I'm teaching, I tend to stick to what I'm teaching about, but I thought it was important for your group and what your group is about. So I was born a twin. I want to start there. I have a twin sister named Lisa, and we used to communicate before we could talk. So I remember our cribs. I remember just like when I say something to you now, you hear my voice first, but it registers maybe a second or two later what I'm saying. So twins just do that without talking. They do that back and forth. And we both have those memories, and we have all of our life. So I had this person that I could practice sort of telepathy with, and not knowing obviously what that was. So I'm sure that contributed to some of my experiences as we got older. We also had a single mom that had a frontal lobe damage to the brain. So if any of you are familiar with that, they have sudden personality changes, and they could go into like rages for no reason. So it wasn't really her fault. She got hit by a car when she was 5 and had her own near-death experience. So, I learned about that later, and I knew something was not, I knew it wasn't her fault. I knew that there was something up with why she had these sudden personality changes, but she also had epilepsy. So I had to know when my mom was going to have a seizure, and I had to know how to navigate her and manage her all the time. So that was a lot. And the magical part is I had these 3 beings. So Raina's one being that speaks through me, but I have a whole bunch of other ones too. And there's 3 main ones that used to talk to me every night and every morning as I was waking up. And it was just normal. I didn't know that other kids didn't experience this. I just thought, okay, well, it was in that in-between space that they would speak to me or about me. So when they were talking about me, I couldn't hear what they were saying. It was a bunch of kind of mumbling. There was a male being and 2 female beings. And then as I was waking up in the morning, I would hear kind of what our day was about. And I would be told what we were kind of watching out for, maybe what mood my mom was going to be in, those types of things. And that happened all my life until I was about 15. So, but the minute my feet hit the floor, it would stop. They were gone, okay. And then it would happen again when I went to sleep. So when I was 15, I woke up and I put my feet on the floor to get ready for school, do what I needed to do. And this time they didn't go away. They kept talking. And I thought, okay, I'm just going to listen. So I listened all morning. I took my shower. I got ready for school. I had to take the bus to school. All the way to the bus stop, too, they were talking. And they were telling me that they were going to leave. And that makes me emotional for some reason. They said I needed to live life and that I needed to experience it like everyone else. So they did. They left when I was 15, and they said it would be hard. And I said, okay, I get it. And I did my first channeled writing on the bus. And from that point forward, a lot of things happened in my life. And I will back up a minute too, because there's a few other things that are important. But I did indeed experience life like everyone else, and it was very strange for me. So I went from constantly, expecting these spirits to kind of speak to me, and then they were not there. And I experienced a lot of pain that I really didn't experience before. And I know this is typical of children. We don't really experience our trauma or PTSD until much later in life. And it starts to show itself in teenagehood. So that's what happened to me. And I learned what PTSD was. And I learned what it was to feel alone in here. And that even though I had my twin, I loved my twin, we are still very, very close to one another. But we ran away from home after that. And my intuition stayed intact, which was necessary for me to have that intuition be intact. But it was kind of without these spirits. And then I started to kind of think to myself, maybe that was just a kid's imagination. Maybe I don't know, maybe I didn't experience that. And that kind of continued until my mid-20s. And I just thought, okay, maybe kids experience spirits and then we just grow out of it, which is partially true, but it doesn't have to be. So I have 3 kids. One of them is like me, and he's 11 now, and he has forgotten nothing. He has his connection to his spirits, and it's because I was able to help him to grow through that and not cut it off. And it's a learning experience for me every day with that. So I want to back up for a minute. So, because your club is Life After Life. I want to talk about my first near-death experience. I was really young, so I don't remember anything prior to the experience itself. I just remember kind of the spiritual experience. But what I've been told is that I had a very high fever and I went into a seizure in a bank, of all places. So my mom handed my sister to the bank teller, and she got in the ambulance with me. And I spent 2 weeks in the hospital. And what I remember is that time I had the tunnel experience. You don't have the tunnel experience every time. I want everybody to know that. So near-death experiences are very different each time. What you see and what you experience can vary. So this time I had that white light tunnel experience. And I got to see the 3 beings. So that's the first time I saw them. I was not quite 2 years old. So I remember there was no, voice conversation, but I remember just having this knowing that they were, imparting to me, okay, you're not going to stay here. You have to go back. And I knew that. And I remember feeling like I could stay there, if I really wanted to, I could stay here. But even I didn't want to. My life just wasn't over. So my mom admitted many, many years later that when I came back, I wasn't the same. So I came back with that intuition and having touched the other side, which you can never, you aren't the same after that. So you died is the word, right? It's not really accurate. You transition to another state of consciousness. That's it. So I had that experience, and following that in my childhood, aside from a lot of the abuse that I experienced with my mom, we had a lot of people transition in our lives, a lot. So particularly around the age of 9, I experienced both my grandmothers and my dad passing for different reasons, all within a month or 2 of one another. We had some really close family friends that passed. And so I got very comfortable with funerals. I didn't know that other kids didn't go to funerals all the time. And my mom was very practical. She did not, due to her accident, she wasn't able to access any sort of intuition or anything like that. She just didn't believe in it because she didn't experience it. So for her, seeing the body was so important. And she wanted us to see the body. And I just remember looking at all these bodies thinking, they don't look the same. And they're not there. Why do we do this weird thing where we put someone's body in front of a church, for everyone to sort of like be with for a while? And I understand that we all have our traditions, right, that we've grown up with. I've broken that in my own family. We don't do that anymore. So we have a memorial. It's more celebratory than anything else. And we just don't do the body thing. It's unnecessary. However, I was a kid that was curious. I wasn't afraid of it. I wanted to sort of examine things. I wanted to get up close and personal and, okay, what happens to our bodies? Why do they look like this? Why does this person not look like how they did when their soul was inhabiting them? Was basically my thought there. I also made the mistake once of pulling back something that was on a head and seeing an autopsy that I wasn't supposed to see. Yeah. So I got very comfortable with that process, I guess. But as I got older and I had friends at school, none of them had experienced anyone passing. Every once in a while, someone had experienced maybe a grandparent passing, but not very often. And so I had this insight really into something that I was maybe not, we do things at certain ages, right? I had so much death so early that I wasn't like other kids in that way. So I was very serious. I didn't relate to a lot of the conversations that kids have with each other at 8 and 9 years old. It didn't make sense to me that kids kind of were silly with each other. They did silly, ridiculous things. They yelled at their parents, all those kinds of things that kids do. I just thought, okay, well, that's not grow up. So coming out of an 8 or a 9-year-old, that's kind of strange. I also experienced my dad's passing in a very unique way. And I wanted to tell you guys about that. So I was 9, and he was the first of the 3, his mother and my mom's mom, that all passed. And he was an alcoholic, so he didn't live with us, and he was off in Key West, Florida, doing whatever he was doing. My mom was not happy about that. And I woke up one night because somebody was in my room. And I sat up in my room, and my dad was 6'5". He was not small. So it was clear that's who this is. But he was dark, like it was more of a dark silhouette and his body shape that I was looking at. And I had all these feelings. So it was very feeling based. There were no words. There were no pictures. I just had this horrible feeling that I couldn't explain. And so I screamed. And my mom came into the room. She walked through my dad and flipped the light on and said, "What?" I woke her up. She was not thrilled about that. And I said, "Well, my dad, he was just standing there." And she said, "No, he's in Florida," said whatever she said that she was upset about, and went back to bed. Well, the next day we were told that he had been murdered. Yeah. So he visited me in the moment, and we found out that when I woke up was when that happened. So again, emotional. Some of these things I will be emotional about, which is why I don't always talk about them, but I thought it was important. So I had that experience, and one of the pluses was never again could an adult tell me that that was not real. So by now I had a lot of adults. I had that conversation around me where, "Oh, that's your imagination. Oh, spirits don't exist." We also had to go to a Christian church, not because my mother was religious, but because it's just what you did. That's it. If you're a good person, you go to church and that's it. And she would tell me that she said, I have no belief. I have no connection to anything. When you're dead, you're gone, you're in the earth. That's it. That's how she talked. So I had this dichotomy, right? Of, okay, so I'm having all these spiritual experiences. You have me go to this church where they tell me that my experiences make me evil. There was that. That was really fun. So I have to hide those experiences. And then you tell me that none of it exists. So there was no consistency with me, with teaching about spirit or any of that. So I had to make up my own decision about that. And so what I decided is I have these experiences. I shared everything with my twin sister. So she admits now she is an interior designer. She's intuitive in that way, but she's not quite like me. She admits that she would never believe in any of this if she did not grow up with me. So, and I would tell her. So I would just get intuitions about all kinds of things. And a lot of times when I was moving, I moved a lot as a kid. I didn't you'll notice when I sit to go into trance too, I kind of move back and forth. Now I understand I do that to keep the connection to spirit. So my Kundalini energy needs that movement. And so as a kid, when I was moving, that's when everything would come in. And I would make these predictions. So I told her that I would have 3 kids and she would have none. And that's true. I have 3 kids and my sister never had kids. I told her that we would one day have these phones that weren't plugged into the wall anymore and that we would be able to see each other on them. That was FaceTime. Yeah, it wasn't even close to being, created yet. And I would just kind of randomly get these things and tell her, and she would say, okay. And she's remembered all of them. So she'll remind me, remember you said this and you said this. I also said we would be able to rewind and fast forward and stop TV like the VCR one day. That was another one. So I call these intervals now. And what's interesting is, there's this, magic put on intuition. In particular, we all have intuition. It becomes more developed in some people. And I always say it's like taking the ballet class or the art class. Everyone can do it to some degree, but some people maybe have a little bit more of a talent for it, or it becomes more developed. And if you never take the class, you may never know. Or if you never follow those intuitions, or you don't pay attention to them, because they are very inconvenient, I will tell you that. So it is inconvenient to be, told or to feel that, okay, this experience we're supposed to go have isn't going to happen. So now I'm very good at knowing, okay, I need to say something about this or I don't. And I kind of let people go on their detours with me. And then I'm not as surprised by, an event not happening or something like that. So now my second near-death experience. Let's go. So the next near-death experience I was 31. I was 31 and I had 2 near deaths 1 week apart. 1 week apart. So, and it was due to a pregnancy that I had. And I had a tubal pregnancy basically. And I knew it, but the doctors did not know it. And I also had a baby in my tube. I also had a baby in my uterus. So I was pregnant with twins. So to the doctor, it just looked like, okay, you're pregnant. And so and my blood levels were fine. So there was no reason to think anything else was happening as far as their science is concerned. So I miscarried the one. I had a D&C. And in that experience, I left my body completely. And I went up into clouds. So there was no tunnel of light this time. So I was just up in the clouds. And what's unique about my husband and we are both channels. So he channels a being named Elijah, and I channel Raina. So I was up there with Elijah. So I had a sense of Raina being there, but Elijah was the one that wanted to come be with me. And he was kind of just cleaning my spirit. there was like a cleansing happening and a feeling that I couldn't have this baby the way that I was. So, and we go through spiritual cleansings at different times in our life. We have to just, cry for a while or whatever it is. So this was like that for me. And as I came back into my body, the nurse was in my face and she said, "Are you okay?" And I'm kind of coming out of anesthesia too, right? And I said, "Yes." And she said, "Well, okay." And so she knew something that I didn't. So it wasn't there for part of my surgery is what happened. And that's why I left my body. So she said, "Also, you were talking about someone that you were with." And she was wonderful. She just wanted me, I think, to remember maybe what happened. And what was very odd is as soon as I was kind of, okay, normally getting up off, you don't just jump off the table after something like that, except that I did. So I just, okay, this is over now, I have to go. And she said, wait, you probably can't walk very well. But I did, I was fine. I went and got dressed. And then the doctor had a talk with me and he said, "If you still have pain, you have to go to the emergency room." And I thought, ugh, really? Now what? And another week went by and I told my husband, "I'm still pregnant." And he said, "Nope." He said, "You had a D&C, you're just in shock," that sort of thing. And I said, "No." I said, "The baby's spirit is here. I can feel it." So I had this one day, I had 5 readings to do. And oddly, every single one of them were nurses. All of them. They were regular clients that I saw. And each one had something different to say about the way I looked. And oddly, my readings were very easy that day because I was not completely in my body. And one said, "Lori, your face is a little bit too white. You might want to have, just maybe have yourself checked out. You might have come back to work too early." And I said, "Yeah, the readings today are just really," but I was at such peace. I felt really good actually within myself. And I went home. I went up the stairs to my apartment. My heart skipped a beat. And I had a vision of waking up at 1 a.m. It was specifically 1 a.m. And everything was dark because I was not in my body anymore. I wasn't alive. It was a quick flash. And I knew, okay, whatever, I think I need to go to the hospital. And my stomach had gotten bigger throughout the day. So I called my husband very calmly. We own 2 metaphysical bookstores. One of them is right here in Laguna Hills, Awakenings. Yep. So I called him there and I said, "I'm pretty sure I'm bleeding to death. And you need to come home and take me to the hospital." And he said, "Well, why are you so calm?" I said, "It's just happening and I need you to listen and just do what I'm saying." And we have another wonderful intuitive there. And she got on the phone and she's a medical intuitive. And she could see what was happening. And she said, "Lori's right. She's, bleeding internally. You need to take her to the hospital." So he did. And it was maybe 5 p.m. And at this hospital, it was a teaching hospital. So there were a lot of doctors, residents. And they first tried to not admit me and then tried to send me home. And I said, "Well, I'm not here for no reason. So have your residents check me out." And they did. They sent me a student doctor. And she was great though. She did her whole protocol and it took a long time. Meanwhile, I'm still bleeding internally for hours. And then somewhere around 12:30 a.m., they tried to take my blood and my skin is like cardboard because I don't have much blood left in my body. Yeah. And then all of a sudden at 1 a.m., another nurse came in and he said, "You're having an emergency surgery." 1 a.m. At 1 a.m. So that was my vision, right? So 1 a.m. I woke up, everything was black. And I remember being wheeled in, knowing I might not wake up. And that's okay. So they also give you this drug to make you forget things, except that it doesn't work on me at all. So I'm listening to them talk about their day and, TV shows they've watched recently. And I thought to myself, I think they think I'm not going to remember this. So it was a big team of doctors too. And then as soon as the anesthesia hit me, I exited my body completely. My body does not like anesthesia either, but my blood count was 8. So that's very, very low. And I was starting to have kidney failure. So I exited my body and I sat on the tools and I watched this surgery for 5.5 hours. Yes. And I thought it was kind of strange that when the doctors needed a tool, they had to reach through me to get it. And then I realized, oh, okay, that's right. My body's there on the table and they can't see me. And there were 2 people in the room. One was my friend Linda, who was not at the hospital, but she had gone into meditation, she said, later to be with me, and I saw her. The other person was someone I had never seen, a 25-year-old man that was beautiful. He was beautiful. He looked like me. He had my color hair, my color eyes, and he talked to me the whole time. And he said, it's not time for me to come. He said, I will come back when it's time, and I'm your son. So that was my 3rd near-death experience. And I ended up having him 5 years later, and I ended up in an emergency C-section, of course, and I was surrounded by my mother and my grandmother who have passed, and this 25-year-old again showed up at my birth. But this time when they took his body out of me, he folded into the body. And I went, oh, okay. He was also 3 months premature. So what Spirit had shown me, and the reason he came to me as a 25-year-old is so that I would know he was going to live. So I went to the hospital. I spent 16 hours a day in the hospital for 56 days before I brought him home. He's 11 years old now, and he looks exactly like the 25-year-old, except he's not 25 yet. So, and he is very magical, and he began to tell me about the night that I died when he was 3. And he described the apartment that I lived in. He described, and I said, okay, honey, you were not here yet. I've always thought that I was pregnant with you during that time. And he said, well, yeah, but it was a spirit. He said, so I remember everything. And he still is that way. He also remembers the incubator and certain dreams he had when he was in the hospital. So I'm clear now that it wasn't easy for him to come through. And I needed to have some of those experiences so he could come through, but also so that I could have my healing. Meanwhile, during all of this, I'm teaching classes. I'm seeing privates. I'm channeling for groups of people. And there's one thing, when you're pregnant, you are not supposed to channel. So it isn't the baby's choice. And it gets pushed out. So before I even knew, I felt this tightness when I would go into trance, like she didn't fit inside of me, And then very quickly during my pregnancy, I could not channel anymore. So for the first time, I had to teach my classes outside of trance, which I had not done before. But with each experience, Raina came in deeper and deeper and deeper. And channeling is a very special thing. It is not, so I'm also psychic, so I can do a reading also outside of trance. I can do mediumship. And then I'm a healer. But those were steps really to channeling. Channeling is a lifelong process. So it's a benefit and I love that I'm able to channel for other people, but it isn't really about that. And this is a strange thing to sometimes explain to people. Your channeling is your relationship to they call themselves unseen friends. Raina calls them inner spirit teachers. It's your relationship to that being. came into this life with you to be born with you and to help guide your life from within. Our higher self does that for us too. They really do. They're much like a spirit guide, but they're just you. So Raina is a little bit, different than that. She has her own life that goes on the other side that sometimes I inquire about. Sometimes she tells me about it. Sometimes she doesn't. She just has grown past needing a body, is how she puts it. Channeling is this lifelong process. I never in a million years thought that she would talk through me to other people. I thought, okay, so I'm an intuitive, I'm a healer, all that makes sense. When she began to speak through me and then, stated, we want to do this with people, that was a big, big deal. I didn't necessarily want to do that. It's a little, my voice changes. It's a little bit strange for people who are not used to it. And it is a subjective experience. Mediumship is not a subjective experience. So any of you that's had a mediumship experience, when a medium brings through a loved one on the other side, you know what that loved one was like. You know if they would say these words or if they would have these objects that they're bringing forward. So it's an objective experience that is provable. Channeling doesn't work that way. So some people feel Raina as she comes into me. Like some of you might have this throat thing that happens when I go into trance. Some people don't experience anything at all. And she really is a teacher that comes to teach, but also really to love everyone and to bring forward this energy, for the group together. So that resonance magic I talked about, and to heal you. So, and that isn't something that we can really prove is happening. So even today, you each will have different experiences from one another. And sometimes, your ego can go kind of crazy and, this doesn't happen. This isn't real. This can't happen. So I went through all those things, obviously, too. So it made sense to me that I was an intuitive person. So this plan of me channeling for others wasn't exactly mine. And Spirit does that. Spirit will guide you where you're supposed to be. And your ego thinks that, okay, well, I thought I wanted to be a makeup artist, by the way. That's what I wanted to do. I wanted to be a makeup artist for a living. When I was younger, I had a psychic tell me, oh no, that's not why you're here. I was 19. She said, she only knew the word psychic. So that's the word that she used. But she said, you're here to be a psychic. And she said, someday a lot of people will see your face because of that. She was from another country, so she was just trying to translate the way she was seeing it. And no. I wanted to be a makeup artist and have fun with my life. So another thing the reason I wanted to talk about some of the trauma and experiences that I've had is some people develop their spirituality through those traumas. And not a lot of people talk about this, right? So you'll hear a lot of spiritual teachers say, you can grow through joy and love. Yes, you can. But we all have challenging experiences in life. All of us. We wouldn't be here otherwise. So, and we have to move through those experiences first. We have to experience the array of emotions that comes with that, and then come to the joy and the love. So we don't get to skip trace to the joy and the love and never have an experience on the earth that is anything other, that is not, other than joy and love. So I love my experiences. I did go through many years of horrid depression. So I will be honest about that. So I had PTSD to the point of, I had panic attacks where my nose would start bleeding, of all things, which is, I would feel like I had no arms and no legs. I would have to go to the hospital over it. And I had a doctor, just one doctor. I had all these magic people that kind of showed up in my life at different times. And he said, Lori, you're having a panic attack. He said, it's a severe one. I will give you that. He said, but you just need to learn to breathe. He said, I could give you Xanax. I could give you, any number of drugs to make this go away right now, but I'm not going to do that. He said, you need to go home. He said, you're going to wake up all night long in a panic attack. And he was right, I did. And he said, you just need to get through it. You need to wake up and just breathe. Breathe in through your nose, out through your mouth, just like we did at the beginning of this. And that was the beginning of me really healing, because I was letting spirit come in. So when we breathe, breath means spirit. That's how we heal. We have to bring them in. So that oxygen that we bring into our blood has spirit in it, has your higher self in it. And they move, literally through you, even physically. And that's why sometimes that deep breathing can make you cry. It's going to move the energy that is sitting in your body out. And so that's what happens slowly but surely. And I was also someone who was taught, you don't go to psychologists. you don't admit that you're crazy ever. So I went through a lot of my path with Raina and my healing alone, particularly through my 20s. So between 23 and I would say 30 was very difficult. I was waking up channeling in my sleep. So all that deep breathing I was doing when I had panic attacks was bringing spirit in a way I had not ever had her in. And she was not trying to hurt me in any way, but she was trying to help me make sense and heal. And heal means wholeness, to bring together. So our minds get split when we have abusive pasts, or even if we just have a traumatic experience. Your mind will split in order for you to be able to deal with that reality. So Raina was attempting to bring all that together for me while I was sleeping. I had a roommate that used to hear me channeling in my sleep. We're still friends to this day. She said, I knew that you needed to do something with that. I just didn't know what. She admitted to me that she used to come in my room and grab my ankle to wake me up, and we would have whole conversations about what I just experienced. She just told me this like in the last year, and I said, what? I have no memory of that. So I was still in a trance state. So sometimes channeling can happen unconsciously for a while, and that's what was happening. It was happening unconsciously in my sleep because I was not going to accept it if it just happened while I was awake. I had no reference for it either. Other than breathing deeply to get through my panic attacks, I really hadn't stepped on my spiritual path yet. So what brought me to that is a trip to Palm Springs with a friend named Angie. So we went to Palm Springs just for the weekend, and I had my first channeling experience through her. So there was also this other being named Peter. So in your channeling process, you will sometimes have more than one being that comes. And so I had one named Peter that was around for a while, and he ended up coming through Angie. So she, I'm sure, was not planning on trance channeling that night. Mind you, she also had not stepped on any type of spiritual path, but it was the only way they could get to me. So I will. That experience still to this day is one of the most probably magical experiences I've ever had. They really will intervene through others if they have to. So, and Peter said, through her, you have a power of which you are unaware. And he said, don't worry, if there's anything here that could harm, it would not be able to harm you. You're safe, you're fine. He talked to me for 2 hours through my friend. My friend was exhausted afterwards, exhausted. And she didn't want to talk about it at first. She said, I don't know what that was. I'm not sure what I experienced, but I just need to relax. So that was my first experience with channeling. Many years later, when my mom transitioned, I learned that Peter was her being, and he ended up going with her. When I was 30, I found a channeling teacher named Sean Randall. I drove to North Hollywood every week from here to go to my channeling class. I did it every week for a year. And because channeling can be a little bit There's this thing now it's called dissociative disorder, but it used to be called multiple personality disorder. So when you have truly channeling happening, if you just go to a psychologist, they might try to diagnose you with something like that. And I knew that's not what was happening to me. I knew, okay, this is something, different. This is something spiritual. So Sean was able to help me to blend. I have channeled over 22 entities before Raina. So I had these different ones coming through me, and it was very refreshing to have someone where this was just normal. This was just normal. So she was in trance during the whole class and would guide all of us into our trance states. So I did that for a year. And that is really what brought me to a place of being able to bring Raina through at will and to really accept it, to really accept that, okay, spirit lives with me all the time and that's okay. And there's something, particularly in this country, we are taught that spirit does not exist. Or if it does exist for you, it means that something is wrong with you. And that needs to change. So that just isn't true. I began to do readings at 26 years old. Very quickly, about 4 years into that, I started to do healings. The majority of the people that I've worked with privately and also in classes are having spiritual experiences they just don't think they can tell anyone about. A lot of them have had traumatic experiences that brought on their spiritual experience. So this is very, very, very common. And as you move through your life, I do think it's odd, I will just say this, that there are some people who just never have those experiences. I think they do. I just think they push it away or something, or like my mom, she had a brain injury, so it didn't allow her to really experience it. Because I've experienced spirit my whole entire life, it is difficult for me to understand that sometimes when someone really just that's never happened to them. How many of you here have had, a spiritual experience or multiple spiritual experiences? See? Yep. Very, very normal. Even intuitions or the intervals, as I call them, we push a lot of those away because they don't seem like they matter in the moment. But sure enough, if you listen to them later in the day, that will make sense to you. It can be something as simple as, well, bring that plastic bag with you. Okay, why? I don't normally take a plastic bag with me. Well, there might be something you have to pick up somewhere. So I've literally had that experience and then needed to pick up an animal on the side of the road. So I won't leave them there. So every little intuition matters. And I want everyone to know too, although channeling is something that you'll experience it through me in this way, everyone has the ability to develop a relationship to an inner spirit teacher. We are all born with them. We're born with multiple of them. And painters are channels. Writers are channels. So in order for us to do anything creative in any way, we have to channel. We're even channeling ourselves. How do we stay in these bodies? Right? Like we see in different situations how easy it is to lose consciousness too. So clearly this is not permanent. And you're breathing in your higher self as a choice all the time. Every time you take a breath, that's your choice. And I think we just take it for granted. Okay, well, my body breathes me. Yes, it does. But on some level, it's also a choice. So I'm going to head off into trance. I'm going to sit over here, I think, to do that. And then after Raina channels, you guys can ask questions and things like that. I prefer to do the channeling part before we do questions, if that's okay. All right. It takes me maybe 30 seconds to go into trance. It doesn't take very long. For 15 years, I channeled with my eyes closed all the time. For some reason, after 15 years, Raina decided to open my eyes. So I'll close my eyes, and then when she starts to talk, my eyes will open. This is still a little bit odd for me because I did it for so long the other way. But I always listen. I do what they say. Okay. All right. Greetings, LG Physical Angels. We are Raina. It is wonderful to be here in this way with all of you. We want to just take a gander for a moment, to take all of you in, to breathe you in, just as she said before, the resonance magic. The resonance magic. Take one big deep breath together. Wonderful. In preparing to come here, because we prepare on the other side, we don't necessarily share this with the channel, ever, only because we don't need to. We wanted to speak about what it is to be in the body temporarily, and why you may choose at some point not to be. Not to be. So we lived many lifetimes here on the earth. Our time was during the Druid era, as you know it. That is what it has been called for you. So we worked in outside ritual. That was our job. You would call that a sort of priestess or something. But we outgrew the need for the body. We just don't need to come into the earth and have that body anymore. However, we are not finished with our experience. So you come into these souls, your soul comes into the body from the higher self. Your higher self is sort of like the mothership. And you depart from that mothership and you have a succession of lifetimes. And then some of them are in the body, and then you decide, well, I don't need that experience anymore. So that is where we are. We know a lot about being in the body because we have been, but it has been quite some time since we have incarnated in a body, and we never will again. And we know that some of you are wondering, where do you go after? Where do you go once you leave the body? It's different for all of you. Some people, some souls choose to stay on the earth, to experience it with their loved ones for a while, to show up to birthday parties, to births, to important things for their loved ones, because they love them and they aren't quite ready to let go either. This varies for everyone. Some will stay close to their loved ones for quite some time. There is about a 3-month period where everyone does this. At that point, you are given a choice. You can move deeper into the spirit world for your next experience, or you can choose to stay here. Now, this is not the same as being a stuck spirit. We know there is that concept of spirits sort of being stuck in a dimension. That isn't what we are speaking of. This is purely by choice. And then you move into the spirit world. You have your inner spirit teachers that were with you all of your lifetime and many other lifetimes. They come, they show up, and they guide you into your next experience, whatever that will be. And there is a lot of information on the earth, particularly at this time, about, do we have to go through the death and rebirth process? Does that have to happen? Yes and no. So then this concept of karma also arises. What is karma? It isn't that you did something terrible and so now something terrible is going to happen to you. That is a little bit funny to us. Karma is simply the energy that you create on the earth. If you create a child on the earth, that is karma that you have left behind on the earth. You may want to see that karma through. So it is a choice to return over and over and over again. This is also one of the most incredible experiences of growth that a being can have. When you spend time in a physical dimension and it becomes as real as it becomes, this is real for all of you right now. You become attached to it. You become attached to your feelings, your relationships, all of these things. On the other side, we don't become attached. We choose to have certain experiences, but if another being needs to leave and have another experience, there is no feeling or emotion about that. It just is. Here, you have feelings about that. It makes you cry. You have grief when a being needs to leave this incarnation, where I'm not going to see them again. I want to hug them. You miss the physicality, in other words. You miss the physicality. On the other side, that doesn't exist. So when you cross over, you come into that and you have memory of other people that were not here with you. Your memory, your unconscious is what it is called here, opens up to such a degree. Oh, wait, there is that mother I had 3 lifetimes ago. I think I want to go and visit her. So you remember much more than you remember when you are here on the earth in a body. You only contain a very small portion of your consciousness, a very small portion. Your brain can only handle holding that small amount of consciousness, yet throughout your lifetimes, that consciousness grows. It grows with each experience that you have. You bring in more of yourself. And that is why, as an adult, you have a depth that a child simply doesn't have. They haven't accumulated their experiences yet. You also you have died many times, we want to say. Already, all of you have. When you grow from a baby to a toddler to a child, you are leaving behind an existence that was very real prior. As you transition to these older ages, your past selves don't go anywhere. They are living, breathing parts of you, just the same as a spirit would be on the other side. It is the same. So your child, your 5-year-old, that you haven't been in a long time, still exists within you. That is your inner child. That is what that is referred to. But it is a living, breathing spirit that needs nourishment, it needs attention, and it needs healing at times. Any past experience you've had that you revisit, that you have memory of, that might even bother you a little bit. Well, why am I thinking about this experience that I had 20 years ago? Why is it coming up now? Because that spirit is seeking healing. That part of you is seeking that wholeness to blend with the whole. And it is a choice that you make to give it that time and attention, either in meditation or by allowing the experience to move you. So we can be moved emotionally by experiences that occurred many, many years ago for that reason. So that is what you're doing on the earth. That is the whole purpose of this experience. And when you transition out of the body, it is really a celebration of a healing experience, something that you have been through that was difficult, because you chose it. We want to speak about choice too. What is it that makes a person conscious. We all live our lives, yes, and then we have experiences that we have to just sort of deal with. What changes it into a choice? The choices you make in the moment are a liminal experience. Liminal meaning in between. So you can choose to be happy. You can choose to move through your experience and then choose the way that you're going to record it afterwards. Oh, that was a horrible experience. Or, oh, that was an experience that I had. It was difficult and I moved through it. And now it is just an experience. Our channel feels that way about many of her experiences. They may make her emotional at times, but they are just experiences that she has had. And many of you also have all those experiences. To walk on the other side is just to become part of the whole once more. Your thought moves you throughout the universe, and there isn't a way for us to explain it to you, for you to truly understand until it happens. This is a question that we get a lot. Well, what is it really like? It is unimaginable. That is the true answer. It is unimaginable. And the love that you experience is unimaginable. And it also does not have any fear or pain. That does not exist on the other side. There are those who choose to carry their pain into their afterlife. There is that happens. And sometimes they are guided into the emotion they were unable to have. If we could give you any advice, it would be when you feel the need to cry, when you have grief about anything, it doesn't matter what it is, please have the grief. Release it now so that you don't carry it to the other side. Many times, why you all have incarnated over and over again is because you chose not to have the grief, not to feel in a many different ways, distracting yourself with whatever you were distracting yourself with. And you get to the other side and you realize, oh, I didn't complete my experience. I didn't allow myself to really move through everything and feel. That is our greatest advice. Feel. Feel when it is joyful. Feel when it is horribly painful. Feel your dichotomy in this world. You live in duality for a reason. So allow that duality. And you know, sometimes, even when something is painful, it is also joyful. We can sometimes laugh hysterically when something is painful. These emotions exist together. So that is our greatest advice, is really to live your life emotionally as much as possible. When you transition, there is always a choice there as well. Always. No matter what is happening with the body, there is a choice. So it may seem as if a person's situation there was no way they were going to come out of that. Well, there are many people who have had those situations and they did come out of it because they decided that it wasn't time yet. You all have that choice, but there is a feeling of peace. That transition is not difficult. It isn't difficult because you are ready when it happens, no matter your age. No matter your age. People transition at all walks of life, all times of life. Children transition, babies transition. It is part of what it is to be physical. Part of what it is to be physical. When you are in the love all the time on the other side, the growth is not as great. It is beautiful, it is wonderful. And so we are here. Imagine that. We can be just in the love, but we are here. Why? Because this experience is so growth-oriented. Many of us that are inner spirit teachers choose to guide those on the earth because of the challenges that come with it. And many of us that have had lifetimes know what those challenges are. We know what those challenges are. We remember it. And this may sound strange, but sometimes we miss it because we don't have that anymore. We don't have that anymore. We have to choose to grow through certain types of jobs that we have. So this is what we have chosen to do. We have chosen to come first to speak with the channel and then with others. So that is what we do, to guide in this sort of experience so that carrying spirit becomes normalcy. That is one reason. It is normal to experience spirit. It is part of life. It is also normal. We love this word normal. What is normal? To develop yourselves, to want to know more. How can I be a better person? How can I move deeper into my spiritual experience? And that brings us back to choice. By the choices you make in the liminal space in the moment. By the choices you make in the liminal space in the moment. The in-between times where you could quickly do what everyone else does. But do you? That moment you make a choice that not everyone would make, your consciousness begins to open up. You begin to see that that choice is how you create your reality, that things don't just happen to you. So you are put in this sort of movie for a little while as well. For a while, yes, your ego runs everything, and it would be not too difficult to just succumb to that. But each time that choice is made, the consciousness grows and you rise above what this experience is. You are able to live within it, but in a different state of consciousness. And that is what we wish for everyone. That is what we wish for everyone. We know that to have questions, we wanted to guide you on a little meditation, and then we will release and allow the channel to answer some of your questions. Wonderful. All right. So we are going to take some questions for a few minutes, and then we will transition so that you can ask Lori some questions as well.
I was curious about the possibility of parallel lives.
Yes, parallel lives are very real indeed.
And the other part of it is some of the higher self that we have, or that you speak of, are they part of our parallel lives? Are they a member of the family?
All right, that is a very good question. As we stated before, the higher self is like the mothership. And they have their own higher self, and they have their own higher self. So we get smaller and smaller and smaller in that way. So you come into this body from the higher self, and this is one life. Your higher self can split off as many times as they want to have other lifetimes. What you are speaking of with parallel lives really means that your higher self has another incarnation, another soul existing here on the earth with you at the same time. Yes, that is possible. It is very rare that you would come in contact with them. We would say that we have met only 2 people that have experienced that. It doesn't serve you to come in physical contact with them. However, it does serve you to know about it. You can visit them in meditation. They may be less conscious than you. They may be more conscious than you. And you may come across many of them. So they are all part of one higher self, yes.
Most people experience some sort of trauma.
Yes.
Abuse, violence.
Yes.
Terrible loss, children, whatever.
Yes.
I'm sure there's a purpose. Can you expand upon what the purpose of these experiences might be?
You agreed to come into an experience where fear and pain exist. And it exists on many levels. You have also been moving through many different lifetimes. You wouldn't be here now in this room if you hadn't lived many lifetimes. And with many lifetimes comes the knowing that in some of your prior lifetimes, you were not as conscious either. So those that experience large amounts of violence in a lifetime have often come from other lifetimes having experienced that violence and also been the perpetrator. So it isn't that it is your fault, that is not what we are saying, but that is also part of what karma is. We leave an imprint on the earth, and if it was negative, in our next lifetime, we will choose a lifetime that allows us to understand what it means to be the victim. And that is very difficult to digest for many, because in your current lifetime, you didn't do anything to deserve that. It is just part of the experience of having been and needing to understand now, and you are left with an incredible compassion because of that for the rest of this lifetime and all of the others. So it is part of your growth. We have also met children who have been, for lack of a better word, serial killers that have memory of that. We have worked with children who have memory of having killed others and are afraid they are going to do it again. So that is one example of, all right, this child has this energy of violence within them, and many times they have experienced violence already. So that is one example of how that happens, and we know it's hard to digest. It isn't that spirit is trying to be mean to all of you or anything like that, but through choices you have made before, you must learn through them again. And when you move past them, you can choose differently in future lifetimes.
I was very close to my mom, and she passed in 2017, and I have not been able to connect with her in any way. Can you tell me what I can do to connect with her?
Yes, we can tell you that. We feel the grief on you now. We know that you are having a grief, but sometimes the grief is so great that it doesn't allow you to experience the spirit. It isn't that she hasn't tried to come through. Most likely she has, but your grief is you're wearing it. So as you have your grief in different stages and you are able to release her, you haven't released her. As you release her energy from yourself, your body even, then she will be able to come. And we know the difficulty of it when it is the mother. The mother created you. You actually come through your mother's soul at birth. You share that space, and it isn't just her body that births you, it is her soul that births you. So when the baby is born, the mother is born. So then there is a connection throughout your lifetime that is different, we will say, and greater than the father. And so when they transition, when they cross over to the other side, your body has to release them, just as they had to release you at birth. So you haven't quite had that experience. When you do, she will come to you in a dream. That is how you can receive her.
Hi, thank you for your time today. I have a question. How does this relate to all the other galaxies? I mean, sometimes we can be very sensed that Earth is the only place here. Do you travel through all these other different worlds?
Yes. And many do. Many of you travel through many different worlds even now. Some of you travel in your sleep. It is why you leave your body every night and you come back. Some of you are focused in other realities that don't have a physicality like this. There are many other worlds. There are some words that are similar to this one, and there are words that would make no sense to you whatsoever. But they all exist. And some of those words have made contact here for many years now. And there are some people that you see that are not from here. You come in contact with them maybe daily and you don't know it. So that is what we will say. There are many planets, many galaxies, and this is just one. So your government for a long time has not wanted that to be known, but they are coming off of that now and being a little more transparent with it.
Thank you for all your experience.
Yes.
I want your opinion about astral projection.
Yes.
I was told that when you leave your body, somebody can take your body in your place. And there's another opinion that when you leave your body, your umbilical cord follow you.
Yes. So no one can take your place. So there are two things. There is astral projection, and then there is something called a walk-in. A walk-in is different from astral projection. In both cases, you leave your body. With astral projection, you leave your body at night, you have an experience, and you return, you come back to the body. Most of you never remember it. Some of you do remember it. When there is a walk-in, there is a physical trauma that has occurred, and the physical body has died. In order for it to sort of come back to life, if it will, another soul has to take its place. And so that occurs with intense trauma, and that does occur, but it isn't like astral projection. It is a very different thing. They will have the memories of the body. They will have to go through learning about the body because it doesn't make sense to their family members that they seem so different. And they will comment, this person seems like a completely different person. Well, because the soul is a different soul. With astral projection, that does not happen, and it cannot happen. So your connection to your body is permanent right now, unless, of course, there's another reason for that. So you will always come back in sleep.
Old soul and new soul.
Yes.
I've heard the terms, and I was just wondering, how do you tell the difference, or is an old soul just a new soul in a different body, or how does it go?
What we will say first is these are words that are used, yes? So we know what you are asking though. A new soul hasn't been to the earth very many times. They may have had many incarnations on other planets, but they haven't been here. They've just started their journey on the earth. How you can tell is that they will seem very young for their age, even their chronological age. Their consciousness is not, we don't want to speak about them as if one is better than the other either, because that isn't occurring, but they are childlike in a way in this experience. And they don't understand a lot of things, and they don't have that wisdom in a way that the old soul does. An old soul has incarnated here many, many times. They are very familiar with what this earth is, Even as a child, they will have memories of when they were here before. They will have a lot of past lifetime memories, where the new soul does not have past lifetime memories because they haven't been here before. And even in a child, you will notice this child has an incredible wisdom. That is an old soul. Even if they are not chronologically old enough to have that wisdom, yet they do. The Dalai Lama is a good example. And that process that they go through each time they are a child, where they give him these different things to recognize if he has been here before. So there are other cultures who are more familiar with this. But we will also say it isn't that important to know if someone is a new soul or an old soul. Both have the same opportunity to grow in their spirituality.
So that's what I wanted to ask you when you just said grow in your spirituality.
Yes.
A lot of people talk about that, and I wonder if there's some benefit to that other than you just feel better and you're happier. What is the benefit to growing in your spirituality?
One of the benefits is not choosing and not needing to incarnate here again. Some people have that desire. Can I grow enough to not have to come back and do this again? And that is one benefit. There are some who do that and still choose to come back here. The other benefit is, and we have to use these words that you understand. So growing in your spirituality is really growing in love. Being able to create more of that, not just for yourself, but for others, here and on the other side. So our benefit of growing in our spirituality in our lifetime was then to be able to be here now and do this. Had we not have done that over and over and over again, we would not have the wisdom or even the desire to come back into life in this way and work with others. So it is always to be in service to others, and it is never a benefit to only yourself. Do you understand?
It sounds like you're saying there's a certain level you have to reach in order to not have to come back here.
It is more about growing in love. So human beings think in levels, we do not. It isn't linear in that way for us. But that is how we can explain it. When you grow in love, your vibration changes, yes. So you see that as being at a higher vibration, and many speak about it that way. And it can seem as if it is better than or less than, but it isn't really. It is greater in the sense of this space you feel in love, not in hierarchy.
What would you say that hampers us from our spiritual growth?
All right, the thing that hampers you the most is the negative ego. We will talk about it that way. The negative ego is a part of you that is necessary. You have to have it to live on the earth. It is what gives you rationale. It makes you wake up in the morning and get up at a certain time and be somewhere at a certain time. It makes sense of your reality. But the negative ego, they aren't really separate, the positive and the negative. But when it becomes negative due to trauma, abuse, experiences in life, it narrows your reality to, all right, this is what keeps us safe. This is what doesn't keep us safe. And if you listen to it too much and you don't allow your ego to just do its job and you allow it to run your entire reality, that hampers your spiritual growth. And you can experience it through anger and narrow-mindedness. I know what I know and that's it. Which is one of the worst things ever. You will never grow if that is how you think. And that is your negative ego. It isn't even a real part of you.
What would you say in a simple way?
is the thing that enhances and helps us grow in our spiritual.
So to have an open mind, no matter what. All right, this experience is strange for me, or I don't know how I feel about it, but don't succumb to what you think you know. So have discernment though, have discernment. Absolutely so, you need discernment. But you can feel it if an experience is true and when an experience is not. So listen to that inner voice and be open-minded, even if you wouldn't be otherwise. The other one is don't stay angry. Figure out why you're angry. Use the anger to move through whatever you need to move through. This is why many of you get angry and then you cry. We want you to get to the crying part. It releases the anger and opens you. So don't stay stuck on that sort of energy.
This may not be a very deep question, but I'm curious why you refer to yourself as we instead of I.
It is a very deep question because we understand ourselves to be multidimensional where you don't. So you came into this body and you have been told that you are an I. Children are not yet an I. They still understand themselves as multidimensional. And a psychologist will say that their personality does not integrate until they are 7 years old. What happens at that age is that they have been conditioned to I. So you are all you all learn that because you have one body, you are one being, but that isn't actually so. Where once we are on the other side, we open up to what that reality is, and we are a we. There are many different parts of us that sort of exist together, but we know that we are a we. So therefore we say we are not I.
Raina, can we have Lori back?
Yes. Give us just one moment. All right, here I am.
Hi, we're going to kind of wrap this up. If you have questions, you can come up and speak to Lori. And I would like you all to give a wonderful round of applause to Lori and Raina.